principle that makes it all humorous, possible, ultimately fruitful, is in this hearing, this communion. The relationship to the spiritual master is the principle that makes the practice fruitful. It is also the principle, you see, that you are at war with. The individual does not want to surrender by tendency. The individual will surrender only on the basis of intuition, hearing. So if you consult the body-mind itself, it only wants to be involved with itself. It would like to have a lot of techniques, it would like to improve, it would like to have better experience, it would like to feel good, you see. It would like to be immortal, it would like to be already enlightened, it would like to be superior to all beings, would like to be guru. Spiritual master. Everybody thinks they want to be a spiritual master. They haven't the slightest idea what that involves, you see. It's absurd. But this Narcissus, you see, is at war, literally at war with his own help. And you observe this then in your play with me, your relationship with me, you see. That is also the way it is. That's also something that devotees have always complained about. This evil in themselves, which is at war with everything true, and is ultimately at war with the spiritual master, at war with the divine in every moment. But it's not absolutely true that you're at war with me, you see. It's simply that the body-mind, by its virtue of its tendencies, is reluctant. In every moment when you fall out of sympathy with me, fall out of this hearing, this seeing relationship with me, you fall into the structures of the body-mind itself, you see, and you see how knotted up it is. So you've got to persist in your surrendering. Bring yourself to the study of the teaching. Submit yourself to the text. Submit yourself to the word of the spiritual master. Engage in the devotional practices with all of your feeling bodily. Engage in them not only in those formal occasions, morning and evening, but in some form or other, engage in it all day long. Because you have heard, because the heart is awake to me. But there's lots of other stuff there too, you see. And that makes your practice a dynamic process. And it means that there will be times when you feel out of it. When you feel overwhelmed by your negativity, your symptoms and so forth, you see. But you've got to have more humor about that. See it happen enough times that it's really nothing more than a headache or something, you see. Expressed in psychological terms. Just something you live with, it doesn't animate you particularly. It's just the tendencies there, and that's all it is. It's just a setup in the nervous system, a setup in the endocrine system at the moment, a setup in the bloodstream for that moment, a setup in the way the wave patterns working in the brain at that moment. The heart is not bound by that, you see. It observes it, sees what a cranky animal the person is, you see. And has some humor about it, and particularly in those moments, you must learn to practice with great intensity, surrender more profoundly, with a tacit recollection of your true understanding, of the true nature of your feeling in relation to me. And you must learn in this process, you see, to make use of me, more and more profoundly to make use of me. Whereas now, you more or less come to me, you get teaching, you get disciplines to live, you get to hear me talk. You get to have some sort of feeling response with me, in some way, sometimes. But you must use me in the spiritual way, which means you've got to grow. The more you grow, the more you will make use of me.
Making more use of you, that comes through intuition, like studying and teaching, is that right?
Right, and surrender. To hear the teaching means you hear me, because the teaching did not fall out of the sky, you see. I communicated this teaching. And if you hear me, then you can live with me. And you can't just hear the teaching, you see, then go off with it. To hear the teaching means to be established in a relationship with me. So therefore, having heard, you must see me, you must live with me, you must practice in my company. That is the secret of the way of life. Not to be self-involved, not just to have a mental understanding, you see. It is to live with me. Directly live with me. The more you do it, the more you fulfill the discipline and so forth. Also, the more the limits, the tendencies, this program of narcissistic structures will break up, loosen, you see. Give you more room as yourself, for one thing, as this body-mind. But give the heart room in which to transcend the body-mind. So naturally there is apparent growth. This intuition, this hearing and seeing, you see, is the seed, it is the awakening. It is the principle of the process. But it doesn't show all of its signs in this transfigured body-mind, you see, until maturity. Having matured to the point of the seventh stage of life, we essentially rest in the same intuition that was there in the first moment of hearing. On the other hand, the body-mind stands in a totally different relationship to that truth. And the usual man, you see, who is the body-mind, and even the body-mind in just some partial aspect of itself, such a one knows nothing of truth, doesn't even care about it very much, and is constantly troubled by his experiences, is always looking for relief, success. The spiritual master is present in the same form of man that others are present in as, but the spiritual master is not identified with the body-mind. It is the transfigured state of the spiritual master that represents your advantage. You can enter into divine communion through that relationship directly and be instructed relative to all of the structures that stand in your way. The spiritual master abides in that condition which is the enjoyment of devotees in the seventh stage. It is a state ultimately without description. Ultimately, it's not even a state. It is simply the transcendental, divine position, without form. Even while conventions of form persist, even while a life seems to be lived.